Yes, welcome. Kaleidoscope, an introduction to underrepresented repertoire. We're really excited to have Dr. Artina McCain and Dr. Gwendolyn Alfred here today. We're going to start with the bio of Dr. Gwendolyn Alfred, who has been praised for her bright and passionate tone. Dr. Alfred recently premiered a newly commissioned work for the Houston Grand Opera, which landed her in the prestigious Texas Monthly magazine. She made her Houston Symphony debut as a featured soloist in their Summer Community Concert series and sang the soprano solos in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony with Houston Civic Symphony and was also Carmina Burana in the Fort Bend Symphony. Dr. Alfred is an assistant professor of voice and area coordinator at Texas Southern University. She earned her bachelor degree of music and vocal performance from the University of Houston, Master of Music from Lamar University, and Doctorate of Musical Arts in Voice Performance and Pedagogy from the University of Houston. As a scholar, her research on William Grant Still's opera, Troubled Island, was recently published in Black Americans in Higher Education, a review of social science research, Volume 8. Alfred has performed recitals on the Black female composer nationally and has presented her research at the Texoma Nats, which I believe is the national, well, I'm not sorry, the NATS Regional Conference. We can get what that acronym means soon. And her recent presentation of this material was featured in the 2020 NATS National Virtual Conference. Her mission is to influence and build well-rounded musicians from diverse backgrounds with her love for a wide array of genres and her eclectic experience with various musical styles. Let us please welcome Dr. Gwendolyn Alfred, and maybe she can clarify for us all what NATS stands for.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Alfred. NATS stands for the National Association of Teachers of Singing. It's a conference where voice teachers on various levels convene, and we have competitions, we have conferences. It's basically like a professional organization for teachers of singing. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for you all to hear this music that has been a large part of my musical journey throughout life, starting from spirituals and progressing through opera, art songs, everything and what have you. So I'm excited to be here, and I hope you all enjoy the presentation today.
Thank you. Next up in intros is Dr. Artina McCain. She has been described as a pianist with power and finesse and having a sense of color, balance, and texture. She has built a threefold career as a performer, educator, and speaker. Recent performance highlights include guest appearances with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, Oregon East Symphony, and the Memphis Symphony Orchestra. As a recitalist, her credits include performances at the Mahidol University in Bangkok, Hatch Recital Hall in Rochester, Coomer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville, Florida, and the DeSoto Arts Commission in DeSoto, Texas. In 2022, she will have her debut at Wigmore Hall in London, performing the works of Fred O. Dr. McCain's television appearances have included features on C-SPAN for the MLK 50 commemoration, as well as being featured as an inspirational leader in the award-winning PBS documentary series Road Trip Nation: Degree of Impact, and an episode exploring the real-world impact of professionals with doctoral degrees in and outside of academia. Dr. McCain is dedicated to promoting the works of Black and other underrepresented composers, and she curates Black composers' concerts for multiple arts organizations. She is also an American Prize winner for her solo piano recordings of these works and won a Gold Global Music Award for her recent album project, Heritage. Dr. McCain has also won performance awards for curating the Austin Chamber Music Center's Black Composers Concert from the Austin Critics Table. In 2021, Hal Leonard will publish her transcriptions of African American folk songs, which is available, and we shall share a link. Additionally, after years of battling performance injury, Dr. McCain is now 10 years fully in recovery and an advocate for musicians' wellness. She has an article on performance injury and muscle activation techniques that was published in the Clavier Companion, and she is a regular contributor for the Piano magazine. To help other musicians, she hosts an annual Musicians Wellness Forum in Austin, Texas, which explores the benefits and options for alternative care. And Dr. McCain has presented on these topics at several conferences and associations, Teachers National Association Conference and the National Conference of Keyboard Pedagogy. Dr. McCain graduated cum laude from Southern Methodist University. She received her Master of Music from the Cleveland Institute of Music and holds a doctoral degree from the University of Texas at Austin. Currently, she is assistant professor of piano and coordinator of keyboard studies at the Rudy E. Scheidt School of Music at the University of Memphis, and is a co-founder and director of the Memphis International Piano Festival and Competition. Dr. Artina McCain is also a Yamaha artist. So we have a lot of credentials at play here. We're really excited to see this intriguing program, and I shall turn it over to Dr. McCain to say a few words if she so desires.
Oh, well, thanks again, Dara, and thanks Group Muse for having us, and for all of you for tuning in on your lunch break or your morning break or your brunch or afternoon tea. I'll just start us off by, just again, it's such a pleasure to work with Gwen. We have done so much work together. Pre-pandemic, we were actually on a tour for Black female composers with our colleague, Dr. James Rodriguez. And so this has become sort of a passion project, at least for me, to collaborate with other artists. And also just it's so great that we have this relationship too, as performing live together and talking about these topics and this repertoire in different spaces like this. So that's my 2 cents. I'll let Gwen jump in there and she'll probably take us on a musical journey.
Yes, thank you, Artina. And Artina and I did meet, we had a mutual friend, Dr. Rodriguez. He's on voice faculty at Texas Christian University. So once we collaborated together, we took the tour on the road, and we've been performing in person and recently virtually since. So, and we're looking forward to getting back in person and presenting that repertoire as well. But now I'm gonna go into the first composer, and this is Harry T. Burleigh. Also known as H.T. Burleigh. Many people refer to him as such. And I have a few notes here from myself just to kind of jog my memory of how I want to talk about these composers. But H.T. Burleigh is well known for his arrangements of Negro spirituals. And I actually stumbled upon him, I guess you can say, when I was in high school, and I sang one of his solos in the UIL competition as a high school student. And he's a Pennsylvania native, he's a composer, he's an arranger, and he's also a baritone singer. And as a professor of voice now, I'm sure to pretty much assign Burleigh to all of my incoming students for the most part. Sometimes I switch it up, but that's usually standard for my first semester, first year voice students. His pieces are artistically composed, and they're perfect for singers who are just dipping their feet into classical repertoire. And for me, it was the closest thing that I could relate to in terms of singing, being that I was raised in a Baptist Black church, and I was a member of the church choir at the age of 7. I really wanted to be a part of the big people choir at 7, but they wouldn't let me. But I sang with the little kids for a while until I was old enough. So when I sing this repertoire, it's nostalgic, it brings me back to olden days, and it's really accessible, and it really calls upon solid technique of the vocal instrument as well. So it helps in many ways to formulate technique within young singers. So the first piece I have by H.T. Burleigh is going to be Every Time I Feel the Spirit. And the second one is I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. And he's composed a booklet of these and for the high and low voice. The pieces that I'm singing are from the high voice book. But that just goes to show you that he has, I guess you could say, roughly about 50 spirituals in these booklets. And you can find them easily online or through many vendors to look at them yourself or assign them to any singers you may know. So let's go into the first piece, Every Time I Feel the Spirit.
I was saying in the chat there, I got some chills at the end there. This
Thank you guys so much. So those two pieces are really what I credit that started my interest in singing classical repertoire, and I like to call them my comfort zone pieces, even into the next composer, Moses Hogan, because they were a part of my childhood so much. So I always view them as that, and I utilize them to really transition people into more serious repertoire and more difficult repertoire, just so they can kind of get their feet wet and they don't feel like they're kind of like marching into brand new territory that's very overwhelming. These pieces can still be, you can still utilize proper vocal technique, you can still build proper vocal technique and still be able to relate it to something that is a comfort zone for you. So that's why I call it a very integral part of my musical journey. The next composer I have is Moses Hogan. Similarly, same deal. I grew up in an area where our choir was known for our a cappella spirituals, and Moses Hogan was one of the main composers we sang. He's a New Orleans native. He's a pianist, composer, and arranger, and he studied at the Oberlin Conservatory, the Juilliard School, and LSU. And I vividly remember performing Hogan's pieces with the choir. So when I got into college as a voice major, that was one of the main composers that I remembered. And I was like, I wonder if he writes some solo music. Because, you know, when you're getting into college, and as for me, I was kind of coming from a small town where I was a big fish in a small pond there, and coming into a new territory of people who had been competing and singing for years. I felt a little overwhelmed at the University of Houston at first. So once again, I was looking for that comfort zone, and I found it within Moses Hogan. And these two pieces are of his Deep River collection. They can be found online and through many music vendors. They're very easy to locate and find. And they're my favorite arrangements of his collection, and they tell us, his compositions truly tell a story, and the way he uses harmonies and chords to really arrange these spirituals is it's really amazing to me. The first piece, I believe, will be Deep River, and the second piece is going to be Were You There? And these are my two favorite pieces to always sing, and I hope you all enjoy these two pieces.
Were you there?
Whew. Wow. I just need to compose myself over here. Goodness.
I'm so sorry for making people cry. But
Oh,
those
yeah.
are my two favorite, and they were switched. They were swapped. The first one was Were You There, and the second was Deep River. So I hope you all enjoyed that one, and I'm going to pass the mic over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. McCain.
Too much pressure, Gwen. Oh my goodness. I have to tell you all a story about Gwen. First of all, phenomenal. And you're just hearing her, on Zoom. Imagine what she sounds like in real life. Gwen, right before the pandemic, Gwen actually came to Memphis, and Gwen's never been to Memphis. At least I didn't think she'd been to Memphis. Gwen walks out on stage to a standing ovation. We're like, Gwen, do you know people here already? Like, they're already standing up for you. And I believe the answer was no. Am I right? So yeah, no.
I didn't know anybody there. That was my first time meeting people. What a warm welcome.
Right. So yeah, if you get the opportunity to hear her live, it's definitely worth it. And I can't wait to play with you again live, friend. I can't wait.
I know we're waiting anxiously, and I can't wait also.
Yes. So hard act to follow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my series. Let's see if maybe I can highlight myself on my own screen. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my series that just came out from Hal Leonard, which is the 24 traditional African American folk songs. And I have it here. If you're a pianist, or you teach pianists, or you're a hobbyist, you just like to play piano for fun, this book and this entire series is really quite phenomenal. They've done a great job of highlighting various ethnicities and cultural groups from around the country and around the world. And this very affordable and very interesting collection of pieces by different authors. So I did the African American folk song traditions. Their South African book is just coming out. There's one from Ireland, from China, from Malay, from Japan. So they're really trying to connect with people over a wide group of ethnicities. So I'm really happy to be a part of this collection from Hal Leonard. So in this book, it's geared towards the intermediate student or the intermediate amateur or hobbyist. And I do have a version of Deep River, not quite like the one Gwen just sang, but it is a wonderful introduction to spirituals. And what I was trying to accomplish with the 24 traditional African American folk songs was just an introduction to the repertoire. So if you have the privilege of getting a copy of the book, and I'll also drop a link in the chat, I have all of these little program notes, and I kind of show them here about each of the pieces. And I'm going to play 3 of them for you today. And another thing I wanted to do when I wrote this series was to introduce rhythm. So a lot of times in pedagogical books, editors will shy away from syncopated rhythms, and they don't really want to make things too complicated for children, but those are the traditions of African Americans and people from Africa. So I didn't want to shy away from foot stomping and clapping and syncopated rhythms. So all of that is in the book. And I also didn't want to shy away from difficult topics. So one of the pieces in the book is Watch and Pray. And Dr. Alfred has a wonderful rendition of that as well. But Watch and Pray is a difficult text, and it's also set by Undine Smith Moore, and you'll hear us perform one of her works at the very end. But it's about a child watching their family sold into slavery. And I know a lot of times we talk about, what is appropriate for children or what is appropriate to perform. And I'm just a firm believer that you can't erase history, so you might as well learn and have useful conversations about what happens. So I put it all in the book in a way that's very conducive to conversations, in a way that you could talk with a student about loss, but you don't have to necessarily talk about, selling into slavery if that's not an appropriate conversation for the age. But the book does, all of the things. It talks about the realities of the African American experience through music in a way that is appropriate for intermediate students. So I am going to play 3 of the pieces for you all today from the book. And the format is sort of social media format. So you'll see me come in with a little, tag about the piece, and I'll show you a little bit of the score, and then I'll perform it for you. So I hope that you enjoy these 3 pieces from the African American Folk Songs collection by Hal Leonard. Hey everyone, I'm going to do a quick instructional video from one of the tunes from my new book, 24 Traditional African American Folk Songs, Guide My Feet. If you can see, this one has stomps and claps. A lot of fun for you or your students to play. Here's another oldie but goodie from my new book, My Lord, What a Morning, from 24 Traditional African American Folk Songs. Today I'll be demonstrating Little David Play on Your Harp, and here's a little sneak peek of those of you who are wondering what the music looks like. This is one of the earlier tunes. Okay, so just a couple of pieces from that collection. As you can see, it goes across several different levels of intermediate students. So the Little David Play on Your Heart is actually quite accessible for a very young student. And Guide My Feet might be a little bit more difficult for the coordination with the claps and the stomps. And then we also have at the very end of the book, an oldie and a favorite, Lift Every Voice and Sing, and Bambula, which have lots of chords and syncopated rhythms. So a little something for everyone. So I hope you guys will check out the book, and I'll be sure to drop the link in the chat at the end of our talk today. So next on my segment of this program is a work by Shirley Thompson. So I will go ahead and apologize because I know on the long and wonderful description, it said I was going to talk about George Walker. But then I realized that I didn't have any female composers, and we weren't talking about too many of them. And I pride myself on talking about underrepresented groups, and definitely female composers are one of those. So Shirley Thompson is actually a Jamaican British composer. She lives in London. She's very well decorated. One of the BBC's top 100. And last year, when we were in the height of the pandemic, I was doing just that. I was thinking, I really want to expand my own horizons. I know I do a lot of Black composers, but I don't know a lot of Black female composers. I'm not performing the music enough, and I think I should be an advocate. So one day on a pretty random Google search, I just, Google Black female composers. We didn't have much to do in the summer, so I just did it. And her name popped up on a site, and I don't even remember where it was, but I thought, oh my goodness, she's alive. I can reach out to her and learn a little bit more about her music. And so I did just that. I reached out to her. I don't know Shirley Thompson from my, neighbor 2 blocks down. And she is just the sweetest person. You know, she immediately wrote me back. She sent me some of her music. She told me where I could purchase some more of her music. And I started to listen and really just fall in love. So one of those pieces that I learned about was called Little Rain. And it's an exploration of sound, visualizing sound. This is something that Shirley Thompson really likes to do, is to visualize sound. And so I was playing the piece, which doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but you know, for pianists, it's really hard for us to count rests. And so I had lots of rests to count on this little rain, these little rain droplets that she's written throughout the music. And so I just asked her, I said, you know, this is such an interesting piece, but I think it would be great if it had a visual. So the two of us collaborated and I created what you're about to see now, which is Little Rain with graphic arts, demonstrating the drops of rain as I performed the piece. So I hope that you enjoy this performance of Little Rain by Shirley Thompson. That's Little Rain. I love the piece. It's so beautiful. And I think the graphics really help enhance the work. So I hope you enjoyed that visual experience of art and sound and music. And last in my portion is a piece by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. It's 3/4 Suite number 1, Opus 71 number 1. And Samuel Coleridge Taylor is a composer that I hope is becoming more and more familiar. I think a lot of orchestras are beginning to play his music. He wrote a lot of works for string instruments and chamber music. And something that fascinates me about the composer, and really kind of how I dove into his music more, was that Samuel Coleridge Taylor is also an English composer, just like Shirley Thompson. But he found out that he had roots in America, that actually his grandparents were former slaves who had been freed during the American Revolution. And so in the early 20th century, he came back to the States and he became enamored with the music of Black people, the folk songs, the spirituals. And he wrote a collection of pieces called 24 Negro Melodies. It's a pretty popular collection and quite a few people are playing it now. And that's really where I started playing his music. And then I started wanting to dive in more, like what else does he have? And so I found this suite in the last year. And now I play all 6 of the movements from the 3/4 suite. And if you're a musician, you might guess that all of these pieces are in 3/4 meter and are explorations of triple meter. And so I will play the number 1 from Opus 71, Samuel Coleridge Taylor's 3/4. There it is. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed those collections of pieces from, things for the very young to things for artists and advancing musicians. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Alfred.
Beautiful job, Dr. McCain. Really enjoyed it. The next composer I'm going to talk about is William Grant Still, and he's a composer from Arkansas. He's a native there, and he studied at Wilberforce University, the Oberlin Conservatory, and he studied privately with George Chadwick and Edgar Varese. So just as Dr. McCain said earlier, sometimes curiosity really brings us to things we never thought we would be interested in. So I was in the music library at U of H, just searching for more music by Black composers. And I stumbled across William Grant Still and found out that he not only composed spirituals, but he also composed art songs. And I started to look into those. And then I even found out that he composed an opera or many operas, nevertheless. And I then began to dig deeper into his operas, being that I was studying opera performance and I was in operas. I'm like, I want to see what these things are about. So I was very intrigued by his opera, Troubled Island. I began to listen to it. I pulled up the score. I thought the music was beautiful. And I decided to do even more research, which led me to my dissertation topic entitled A Dark Past and a Promising Future, the Historical Reception of William Grant Still's Troubled Island. And a portion of that I did publish in Black Americans in Higher Education, a Review of Social Science Research, Volume 8. So in that chapter, I talked specifically about the history of William Grant Still's compositional style, because he was influenced by many things, by church music, by being on in musical theater. All of those things are heard in this score, and how it was received by the audience members at that time and critics. And this was a time when Black composers were not warmly welcomed in the world of opera, being that it was such a serious genre. And this idea actually expanded my curiosity even further into Black female composers. And I'll get more into that as we get into the next performance with Dr. McCain and myself. But this piece is entitled Grief, and it can be found in an anthology of art songs by Black composers. It's a pretty well-known anthology, the first book of these pieces. And it's not widely performed, so many people may not have heard it, but you can find recordings of it. And here is one of William Grant Still's art songs entitled Grief. So that particular piece ends on a dissonant note. It's a surprising note because, you know, you have all these harmonies happening and then you have that note. So of course that piqued my interest as well, and I researched it, and it was purposely done to really just show off the ambiguous nature of what he wanted the message of the song to be. So that's one of William Grant Still's art songs, and it really piqued my interest into the art songs by Black composers. And then I went ahead and transitioned over to Black female composers. I had did a little bit of research of these women when I was an undergrad, but I revisited this component when I met up with Dr. McCain and Dr. Rodriguez, and we decided to compile this touring recital of Black female composers and their art songs. And these women, of course, they were really good at composing spirituals, and their spirituals are beautiful music, but we really focused on the art songs of these women and just the accessibility of it and the beauty of it. And it led me into researching more into the women of the women composers of this genre, And part of that research is featured in the Nats Journal of Singing. Dr. Rodriguez and myself, we wrote this article that was published in the Nats Journal of Singing. And it not only introduces you to these women, but it helps you categorize them in a way that you can present them to students in the voice studio. And we've developed this rubric for beginner, intermediate, and advanced students. And we've basically put these categories of songs and composers in this rubric so that you can really focus on specific vocal technique things to emphasize through these artists and composers. I believe I shared a Google Drive link because the Nats Journal of Singing is really subscription based. I just uploaded it and I sent it to Ms. Dara to share with you all if you are interested in introducing this to your colleagues, to anyone that you may know that may be interested in these composers. And this last composer is a duet with Dr. McCain and myself. It's Love Let the Wind Cry by Undine Smith Moore. And do you want to speak some more about it, Dr. McCain?
You did it. I'll play it.
She's a little bit of background with her. She's a Virginia native. She's a pianist and she was a professor of music. And she studied at Fisk University and the Juilliard School. And she composed arrangements of spirituals and art songs, including this one we're gonna perform for you all. And somebody has something to add?
Sorry, really quick before, I hate to interrupt this flow because y'all are just doing it, but I was gonna ask if you could, because I certainly learned about this in some of our conversations together, what is the distinction between a spiritual and an art song?
Okay, so spirituals are typically based off of either hymns or church songs, and some of them have double meanings called the double entendre. So in slave times, when the slaves did attend church services, they picked up these songs that were sang at church and they utilized them in the fields to have this double meaning. Like, for example, Go Down Moses can be utilized to signal for freedom. And they could be singing these things, but it means something else. So that's where the spiritual category pretty much sits. So when we're singing things of that nature, that's where the spiritual category and genre is. Art songs are typically based off of poetry. And these could be various poets. We have Black poets, we have civil rights poets, we have a lot of poets from the Harlem Renaissance era that these composers looked upon and they wrote music to the poetry of these poets. So that's the major distinction between those two genres.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll play Love Let the Wind Cry.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Amazing. If we could all just unmute ourselves and give them a round of applause, it feels so like rousing. So yes, thank you guys
Aw.
so much.
Bravo, bravo, bravissimo, bravo, bravo.
Thank you.
Pretty good.
Really incredible. I learned so much just now, and it was such a pleasure to witness your artistry and get that little smorgasbord of amazing artists and composers and history. So I know we're basically at time, but if you all I don't know if anybody has any pressing question or just comment and accolades that they would like to offer very briefly. I know this was a window, but I'll stop talking and give the floor to anybody who would like to say anything briefly, if at all, or we're just blown away. Bravo. So we had a lot of love in the chat here, but I just want to offer our gratitude one more time for you all offering this presentation and really, introducing us to, and I loved the, George Walker's great. For people who don't know, the first Black person to ever win a Pulitzer Prize. It's amazing. But I also love the shout out for but you know what, let's represent for the female composers out there. So it doesn't seem like anybody has anything to offer additionally, because I think I'm saying it all for all of us. So
No.
My apologies. Make no assumptions.
New York.
Sorry, Margaretta.
New York City is the capital, I think, cultural capital of the world. Girlfriends, come to New York City.
Standing invitation to come to New York.
Hey, we would love to.
Do not be shy.
We would love to.
Well, I don't know what else to say. You gotta welcome.
It's out there in the universe. We have a lot of New York people on this call, so we definitely can set that in motion. So thank you for offering that to manifest, Margaretta. Okay. So I really don't want to hold people over, because I know that this was like a midday and, people have to run. So if there is truly nothing else, going once, going twice. I think the New York invitation is really, we'll work on that.
Hey.
All right. Thank y'all so much. It was such a pleasure. Really.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Group Muse.
Thank you everyone for coming. Look out for the recording.
Yay. Awesome.
By the publications.